Going to start right away.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Burris,
And I'm Dr. Kim,
and we're here at Coachella Valley Direct Primary Care.
and we are here for our COVID show. And at our clinic, we serve Coachella Valley families to keep them healthy by offering membership services and direct care to your providers. And today is October 18th, 2021. And how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I think we got some good numbers to report. I haven't seen them yet, but I'm excited to see what you have in store for us. So,
Yeah, and we'll update sort of where the approval processes are for children and for the boosters for Moderna and Johnson & Johnson today as well.
oh, that sounds like a good show.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with our slides, and we're going to look at our numbers first. We have basically a continuation of what's been going on over the past month or so. Let's see if we can get that one up. Oh, well, I seem to have sent them too late. So I'll tell you about the slides. Basically, what we've seen over the past few weeks is a trend downward in a gentle slope. So that means we're continuing to see falling numbers in both our hospitalizations and new cases that are being diagnosed. And as of about a week ago, our positivity rate for the county had actually fallen below 5, and it was down at 4.7. And that's the last data point that we have. So hopefully that trend is continued, and this week it's fallen even further. And that tells me that we're continuing to go in the right direction. I think this is the expected result after seeing Delta move through the community. And what we'll see here is a continued downslope, and there will be possibly a small blip, we predict, over the holidays where there's more mixing of people indoors with those like close contacts. But honestly, a lot of people have either recently had COVID and are still relatively well protected for a few months, or they've been vaccinated. And so even if we do see a blip, I don't think we'll see the spike that we saw last winter unless there's an unexpected new variant that eludes the vaccine. So that's sort of where the numbers are.
What about the hospitalization and ICU? Were they stable or?
They have continued to fall as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing still what I would call um, sort of the end of that chain of the last spike. So we're still seeing a few deaths, but not as many new admissions. So the ICUs are, the census is falling for COVID, which is good. This is good timing for us to have this wave die down, because moving into this season, we are seeing quite a few people returning to the valley. And so when you just have more people there, more things happen, and you need those ICU beds for other issues, strokes, heart attacks, um, sepsis, all sorts of things. So not having a large COVID census is really critical as we move into the winter with our snowbirds, with flu season coming up. Um, Flu in the general population, I think most people don't really think about flu as a dangerous
Right.
thing. But for us in medical care, we see that it's um, a mild illness for many, a severe illness for some, and a fatal illness for a few. So I feel like we'll probably be around that state with COVID in a couple more years. But right now, still COVID is much more of a threat, but flu is coming. So we have both of those on the horizon that we need to prepare for and think about as we go into the winter.
Right. So those are some really good data and news.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but if you don't haven't noticed or recognized, I'm a big analogy guy. So for me, it's like we have this football team, and we've done the things that we needed to do, or pick up whatever professional sport, basketball, you're a tennis player, and you've got your regimen down, and you've gotten to where you wanted to be, right? You got yourself into the U.S. Open, you got yourself into the Super Bowl, you got yourself into the Tour de France, and to stop what you've been doing that got you there seems to be a little silly, especially if you don't know what's going to happen. And so, I would just hope that people continue to do what they're doing rather than changing with numbers and this and that. Because my fear is that as the number keeps going down, people will be like, well, we don't have to do anything anymore. That would be like a diabetic saying, well, I've eaten well, my diabetes is gone. I can eat now all I want. That's just going to kind of put you backwards. So for
Yeah.
now, I think, keep doing what you're doing the same things so we can continue to drive those numbers down, because eventually then you can back off and there won't be these little blips that become problematic.
The question is always, at which inflection point should we get rid of a mitigation factor, right? So if you have a behavior, for instance, say masking indoors, that's been driving your numbers down, and you get it down, if you take that off too soon, you'll bump back up. And what we've seen is that as soon as the numbers started coming down, we just kind of got rid of mitigation fairly quickly. So a lot of things were happening at once. You still had, you know, suboptimal vaccination levels in the community with, okay, now this city has masks, this city doesn't, people sort of ignoring everything. And I think personally that's why we haven't seen that downward curve be very steep. We're just coming down gradually because we really haven't really focused on getting rid of Delta. We've just kind of been like, oh, we're good now, and that it's coming down much more gradually than it would have if we had decided to put the nail in the coffin.
Well, even just outside of that, everything that it impacts is a titanic ship in the sense that it moves very slowly, and that changes take a long time to implement. And if we're yo-yoing back and forth, mask, no mask, social distance, no social distancing, doing this and that, it really does take time. And by the time it changes again, they've just made the previous change.
Yeah.
And so I would rather just, say, let's play in these lanes. Hey, the numbers are great. Great, we're going to be in this lane. Hey, the numbers are getting worse. Great, we're going to be in this lane, so that there's no back and forth until there are significant changes either way. And that's just what I would prefer to see rather
Yeah,
than.
I think it would be less confusing for people,
Yeah.
but also people are like, well, why are you telling me to do this? It doesn't seem to work. Or why should I do it? We got the numbers down. I still have to do it. I'm not going to do it. I mean, I feel like there's just so much of that it's almost gotten to the point where there's like half the population that doesn't listen to anything anymore. And it's almost like they feel like it's the boy who cried wolf and everything you say is useless.
Well, that's because the recommendations have changed so much. And that's my point, is if they had stayed in a lane and said, great, this is happening, but we're going to stay in this lane. Great, this is happening, we're going to stay in this lane. Then everyone would be like, okay, this is the lane. Rather than, hey, the numbers are worse. Okay, let's march it out. Oh, the numbers are getting better. Let's march it back. And it's, that's the nature of any pandemic. It's going to ebb and flow.
Mm-hmm.
And if we try to do that as a nation in terms of regulations, people are going to, this is what we're going to get, is this. Anyway.
So anywho, let's talk about what's happened this week in the booster recommendations. Yeah. So we've talked about before that there's a process of having all these meetings of these different agencies and then having something available when you go to the drugstore or your doctor's office. So just because somebody has a meeting and makes an announcement doesn't necessarily mean the next day that we're doing it. So that's been, I think, kind of also a little odd to people. It's like, why are they keep announcing these things if we're not doing it?
Right.
So the FDA is meeting, and they take the data from the drug company and they look at it, and then the FDA approves things or doesn't approve things. But in the case of vaccines take this extra step of having to be recommended by a committee at the CDC that's made up of um, uninterested third party
Well,
scientists.
that's not
Okay,
uninterested.
not, I would just say as objective as
Right.
possible. So
They're interested in
these
your health, and
these people don't work for
right.
industry. They, these are people that are as tie free as possible, and that's actually a really important safety step. So right now, um, Pfizer booster has been through the whole process. The Pfizer booster went through the FDA, and then it went through the CDC. It got its recommendations, and now Pfizer vaccine recipients are getting boosters, but only in the high risk populations. So different committees said different things, but the general consensus is for people who got Pfizer, they should have a booster if they're at high risk. So over 65, immunocompromised, um, underlying health conditions. And then there was a little disagreement about people who work in frontline positions. And what I would say, if you're not high risk and you work in a frontline position, this booster shot right now is completely optional. And it would probably be something you'd want to consider based on your own risk profile.
Right. Or talking to your provider.
Right. Talk to your doctor about the benefit versus the risk. And then, so what's happened with Moderna is Moderna came through that first step through the FDA, and they applied for a booster dose for people 6 months later, 18 or over, with half dose, so half of the original dose. And what happened is the FDA only approved it like they did for Pfizer, which was 65 and older and high risk. So right now, that's what's heading over to the CDC for them to consider. Now, Johnson and Johnson is different because their initial protection with just the one shot against the Delta variant is lower than the Pfizer and Moderna. It's only in the 60s, and Pfizer and Moderna is in the 80s. So their recommendation for Johnson and Johnson is that everybody who got the Johnson and Johnson vaccine get at least one shot more. And then the question is going to be, should somebody who got a Johnson and Johnson vaccine initially, would they be better off by getting one of the other vaccines, the Pfizer, Moderna? And that's actually being discussed right now. So if you're kind of in the camp where you're like, I kind of like to get another vaccine, be patient and wait, because that recommendation probably will be also coming out in the next month or so, maybe less. We'll see. But they got a lot on their plate because they're also meeting at the end of this month to look at Moderna in age 5 to 11. Oh, wait, no. Pfizer in 5 to 11 and Moderna in 5 to 18. So there's a lot going on and there's a lot of little details. But suffice it to say, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff happening right now. And hopefully by Halloween, we'll have a recommendation on the kids. And then for the Moderna and Pfizer boosters, Moderna and Johnson boosters, we should see something coming out of the CDC probably in another week. And once that recommendation is made, Moderna and Johnson boosters could commence.
Right. And most likely they're going to be at your pharmacies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your local doctor probably won't carry it. If it's a large enough group,
They
they
might.
might.
Yeah.
But you're a better bet for the most person. For the most average person, is just to
The pharmacies or the county
right.
administered, and you can find a place that does boosters or originals if you're in California on myturn.gov. So it's
Right.
myturn.gov.
And is Vaxi still up for the Riverside County? Or
I'm not sure.
okay.
Okay.
So I think that's all we wanted to talk about today, right?
Yes, I think that's it for today. It's kind of a week where thankfully we don't have a lot of really bad things to discuss. We will mention today that Colin Powell passed away this morning from COVID complications. He was fully vaccinated, and I think that confuses people. One of the reasons that no vaccine is perfect is because if you are vulnerable, if you get even a cold, sometimes that's enough to cause someone severe outcome or death. So even though vaccines really protect us, our most vulnerable can be harmed by lighter illnesses. So that's why we really push to try to vaccinate the entire community, is to protect someone like Colin Powell from running into COVID in the community, catching it, and despite being protected by vaccine, it wasn't enough protection because he was so vulnerable.
Right. So to sum it up, the numbers are better. We have a lot of data coming out, and it's going to get a little confusing. And so, if you are confused, you should definitely call your doctor's office. And if you can't get a hold of your doctor, you don't have a doctor's office, um, you can always give us a call. We do free consultations for people who want to join, and that's really why we changed to a direct primary care model, is so that we can be there for our patients and have those patients ask questions on that and anything else, and we're available. Instead of hearing from us in 6 weeks. So if you can, stay tuned. We have on the show coming up, Your Health, where we talk about many different things. We have been talking about sleep and why that's so important and critical for everyone. So we will see you guys next week. We hope you have a great week, and we hope the numbers continue to improve. Stay safe out there, and thank you for all you guys are doing.